Hello, welcome to OPA GCSE Sociology. And today we're starting a new module. We're starting the sociology of the family. And today we're going to start the first lesson off with how do we define a family? So don't worry about the do now, as it's a new half term, or new topic rather, in the half term. I've just got you to put in a new knowledge schema, but obviously that's something you do in class. So we're going to move on just straight into the first task and really get started. But before that, I'm just going to give you a breakdown, just a reminder at the end of every unit, as I do, of what we've done so far and what the course is, just a reminder. So as we said last time, the exams, so the GCSE is split into two different exam papers. So in paper one, you've got two sections: the sociology of the family and the sociology of education. And then paper two is the sociology of crime and deviance and the sociology of social stratification. So what we have done is, so far, the 2 units before that we've studied, the introduction to sociology and research methods, although it's not its own unit or section within the exam papers, there are questions relating to each paper in each section. So you'll have 8% worth of your GCSE going towards research methods questions that will link to maybe crime, to family, education, stratification. And it was important we went over the theory in the first unit because it was really setting up certain topics for later on. So we're going to be looking at a lot of family and a lot of theory and family, and education and crime in all of the units. And you need to understand the basics of it. So where we are in terms of on the course, so we've done that first unit, as you can see there, in the first half term. We finished it off in the second, and we've just gone through research methods in half term 2 and the first part of half term 3. So this is an indication what we'll be going over in half term 3, and you can even see half term 4 there. So we're going to be going over the family. We're going to be looking at various things. So things like what different theories are about the family and its role. We'll be looking at how the family's changed over the last 50 years. We're going to be looking at different viewpoints, theoretical viewpoints of things like divorce, like conjugal roles, symmetrical families. And then you can see the sociology of education at the end of half term 4. I'm not going to talk a lot about that. And then goes into 5. And then crime and deviance for end of half term 5 and half term 6. And then we'll finish off next year, the final unit on social stratification before going into research, revision of all of the units. Right, let's jump in. So why is the concept so important? So before we even define it, we need to know why we're defining it or why it's important. So most of us at some stage in our lives will live in a family unit. However, our preconceived ideas about what a family is can often be overshadowed by our own lived experience. This can often lead to false misconceptions. For example, many still in society believe some of the things I'm about to say. Women cannot live on their own having children. Gay couples should not adopt children. Mothers with children under 11 should not work full-time. Marriage is still the best form of relationship for families. Families should take more responsibility for their elderly relatives. Now, today in society, or you may be reading this and listening to this and be shocked by those statements. They're not reflections of my views, but it's just an example that some people do still hold those views that might be controversial to you because they have preconceived ideas of what a family is and essentially have lived experiences that may reflect those views. Politicians and the media often have ideas about how the family should be as well and how it should live. And they can often be quite controversial. So they might stick in traditional ideas. So it's a sociologist's job to challenge these misconceptions about what a family is as well as demonstrate the structural changes over time of the family. So it's really trying to highlight, as sociologists, there is no ideal family type. Each family is independent and unique to its own, but also just to acknowledge how society has changed and how the family unit has also changed. Right, so either discuss with someone in your household for the next 2 minutes, or just even think about what would be a definition for the family. So maybe just write one down. Okay, just pause the video for 2 minutes and see what you come up with. Right, so for task 2, how we actually define the family. So you may be thinking a family is essentially, many in the class have said this, that it's a mum, a dad and kids. But it's quite a simplified view, and it's something that Allen and Crow in 2001 really highlighted. They wanted to illustrate that defining the family is complex and often overly simplified. So I'm just going to read out a statement that they said over 20 years ago now. So, at times, my family can mean my partner and children. At other times, it may include my grandchildren too. Alternatively, it may refer to my own family of birth, that is my parents, brothers and sisters, or it may mean a wider range of relatives, including, for instance, aunts and uncles. It may also mean a much smaller group. For example, just a married or cohabiting couple living alone. Often the meaning intended is clear enough from the context in which the term is used. However, when sociologists study the family, there is a need for greater precision in the use of the term. So Allen and Crow are really trying to highlight here that we have different family types in different parts of our life. So we may start off with, or we may not, but I'm just going to use my case as an example. I was a son, so I lived with my 2 brothers and my mum and my dad. I then went off to university and I cohabited with my friends, so I live with my friends. I've now moved in living with my partner, so we are both just cohabiting. But then if in the future we choose to get married and have children, we're starting our own family. It's this grey area. Does that not mean the old family is still family? And why is it changing? Surely it should be a static thing. Allen and Crow are highlighting that in your life cycle, the family looks like different things to different people. So Allen and Crow are stating we need to be careful how we define the family. Our family types are often changing and can mean different things to different people. So some sociologists use a definition that is narrow viewed. Now there's 2 sort of viewpoints we'll be looking at, the narrow viewed one and the more encompassing view. So this is quite an old fashioned view, but I do want you to get this down. So write down this quote here and just put narrow view of family. So it's a group consisting of a married couple and dependent children who live together. So once you've written that down, just for 2 minutes, pause the video and then perhaps bullet point down just some ideas what you think is wrong with this definition. Right, so here are some of the issues with this definition. What about families without children? Families with extended families? So that might be grandparents, aunts, uncles living with you. What about families with no blood ties? So friends, you might be living with your friends. What about families with guardians? So that might be adopted or godparents. What about people who live alone? What about blended or reconstituted families? So those with step-parents, step-brothers and sisters. The definition we saw previously wasn't broad enough. And it's quite an old-fashioned way sociologists have tried to define a family. So perhaps a more contemporary definition would be something like this. Option 1, a couple whose relationship is based on marriage, civil partnership or cohabitation, with or without dependent children, or a lone parent and their children or child. Again, though, it's still quite wordy. So you could say something as simple as this, and this is something I would encourage students to say instead. A group of people living together, related by blood, marriage, or common bond. So it's quite a broad statement there, and it's acknowledging different family types. Alternatively, some sociologists just prefer to use the term families rather than the family. This way it recognizes a range of different family types, relationships, household arrangements in the UK. So what I'd like you to do is just go back to task 3 there, write down a few of the issues with that narrow view, and then just acknowledge these 2 much broader definitions of how sociologists define the family. Right, so for the final task, you're just going to answer this question. Identify and explain one reason why some sociologists use a broad view rather than a narrow definition of the family. So if you remember, these are the broad views. So we're trying to acknowledge the complexities of the family and different family types. And that's the narrow view. So you're going to be referring to some of the issues on this slide. So you're going to choose one. And you're going to use the same structure as before. Okay, so you're going to define it, state why it's important, and give an example. And then once you've done that, feel free to bring that into class and I will mark it.